Hey everybody, I'm Aaryn Lang. Welcome to
We gonna take it, 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 gonna take it to the top. I'm gonna take it to the top.
Hello everybody and welcome to another installment of Miss Lang Presents. I'm Aaryn Lang, obviously, and today we're going to be talking about what white educators can do to be anti-racist in their teaching and in their practices in their classroom. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome my lovely, lovely guests. Hello, ladies.
Hi, Aaryn.
I'm Courtney Johnson. I am the library media specialist in Columbus, Ohio at Fort Hayes Arts and Academic High School. And I've been teaching in Columbus around 20 years, and mostly at Fort Hayes, where Aaryn and Nancy were both my students. So I'm the mother hen old lady here. So really grateful to be and honored to ask to be sharing today what I've learned and unlearned when it comes to anti-racist teaching, and we got a lot of work to do. So thank you for asking me, Aaryn.
Of course.
I'm Nancy DeLeon, and Aaryn and I have known each other for over 10 years. We're both graduates of Fort Hayes Arts and Academic High School, which is where I currently teach. I'm an English teacher for 9th and 11th grade, and I've been at Fort Hayes teaching for next year will be my 5th year.
I really wanted to ask you both what brought you to teaching in the first place? And if what brought you to teaching is why you still teach today, has that changed over time at all for either one of you?
I really love books. I always loved books. I always loved reading whatever I wanted to read. And I really like kids too. So honestly, I was at OU, at Athens, Ohio, the original Ohio University, and I was browsing it used to be on paper, like a catalog book. And I was like, what can I do that brings these two loves together? I really hadn't considered being a teacher. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. For me, it is about doing something every day that lets me continue to have this hopefulness and to see this joy and to bring kids and books together. And it's more than that, but that is really where it started for me. And it's changed a little. Now, we'll get into this later, but Nancy and I are really into student agency now. And so I've kind of shifted a little bit to that. But that's still it. It's kids and books. I mean, like, I get to do that every day, all day long. And it's super fun.
So the reason why I asked Courtney to go first is because I wanted her heart to be shared. The reason I'm a teacher is because Courtney Johnson told me I should be a teacher. It was back in high school. I was writing something on the whiteboard, and I had been considering a career tech program, and Miss Johnson said, "You're going to be a teacher." I was like, what? Because I never saw myself in that light. And she said, yeah, you're going to be a teacher when you grow up. And so I enrolled at Capital University, and like Miss Johnson, I had this passion for young people. I had passion for their energy and their brilliance and their magic. And I thought, well, let's take a look at this. And why do I continue to teach? Because I still have that passion for young people. I still love their brilliance, their energy. They've got this fire in their bellies. They know everything, right? They know everything. And what I find is that they do know everything, and it's just our job to hold space for that and let them untangle what is their truth.
So, what was the catalyst for you to adopt an anti-racist teaching model? Because I know you, and obviously I know your heart, but how that could look in a classroom, I don't know. So, but was there a specific happening that made you realize I actually need to be blatant in my anti-racist teaching and not just anti-racist in my heart?
Mm.
So when I came to Fort Hayes, yes, it was my second year there that you all were in my classroom. So one of the books on the ninth grade English teaching list back in the day when we kind of stuck to some, canonical works, was Black Boy by Richard Wright. And I had never read it. I will say that I did grow up in a family that was pretty progressive and raised me to think about things from a more progressive lens, right? Even though I grew up in Southern Ohio, I was very different than a lot of folks there. And I remember very clearly when I was very little that I didn't spend a whole lot of time with my dad, but he was bringing us home after a Sunday with him. I repeated something that was so blatantly racist that one of my grandparents or like an uncle or somebody had said. And my dad, I remember what street we were on, where we were, and my dad was not a saint in any fashion. And he looked me he pulled over and he looked me in the eye and he said, "We do not believe that in this family." And I didn't even think about it being a family, to be quite honest with you, because I only saw him on Sunday afternoons. But I so clearly remember him telling me that I wasn't allowed to talk like that, and I wasn't allowed to repeat that. And if I heard that from any of the people the older people that I was around, that they were wrong and that they shouldn't be saying those things either. And I just remember so clearly that lesson that he taught me when I was like, I don't know, I had to be like 6 or 7 years old. And I mean, it just always stuck with, from that moment on, I had a little more of a critical lens that I was looking through. Right. So I feel very fortunate to have had that. And, it just, Aaryn, it just builds, right? The more work you do, the more work that you have to do.
Yes.
And so, I come to Fort Hays and Michael Saxon is like, "Hey, we teach Black Boy in the 9th grade." And I'm like, "Well, I better read it." And that book blew my mind. I mean, just the lasting legacy of slavery into the early 20th century. And then fast forward, I spent 1 year teaching in a predominantly white institution, and I taught Black Boy. I brought my, I brought that book with me there. That was not a book that they had on their curriculum. I taught junior English, and I said, I cannot teach American literature without teaching Black authors. And one of the kids there that was African American, Black, was like, I asked this group of students, my 3rd period class, if they're going to watch this, they're going to probably like flip out right now. My 3rd period, I asked them if they'd ever read a Black author, and they were like, "You mean like Dr. King?" They had never in 12 years of compulsory education read a Black author in that school district. That really ratcheted it up for me. And I know we're probably going to get into this a little bit later about if you're white teachers of white students. But that really like turned, and this was years after I had the two of you, right? This was in 2011. And that ratcheted it up for me, right? Like every kid in this school needs to be reading Black authors, right? So that is one major moment where I was like, okay, I got to do more very conscious choices here to be anti-racist in my classroom. So Nancy, I don't know, that was a really important moment for me.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I had a specific moment. I would like to agree with Courtney that it has been, each year I'm building on unlearning and learning in my own life and in my own self and doing that soul work. And each year, as I continue to learn and unlearn, I find that there's so much more that needs to be done. And so the first thing, my first year of teaching, I was working with I actually taught 7th grade, and I was working with another 7th grade teacher, and he asked if we could teach the story of Claudette Colvin. And I never knew her story. I had a bachelor's degree and had made it all the way through my education experience, and I never knew who Claudette Colvin was. And we were able to teach her story. And that was in the moment I realized that first of all, I needed to empower students with accurate history and center Black heroes and center Black resilience and Black joy, but also that I still had so much to learn for myself. And as I continued to hold space for pro-Black curriculum in my classroom, I see the impact that it makes in the lives of students. And their response to that curriculum is that they feel empowered, and that motivates me to continue the work. The other thing I would say that makes me want to be deliberately anti-racist is when you're working in institutions that are predominantly staffed by other white educators, and you start to see spaces in the school setting that are not designed to liberate, they're designed to domesticate. And so that encourages my work in being blatant with my anti-racism, because I'm working on being better about checking my colleagues, so that way their spaces liberate and not domesticate.
Wow, I love that you said that, because I was curious about that. Because I know it's great to have individual teachers and librarians that are dedicated to this work, but what I'm always so curious about is the culture of an environment and how the entire culture is impacted by this. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it has looked like for you to actually have to hold your colleagues accountable for the ways that they conduct their classrooms?
Would you like us to talk about common mistakes that we see, or just ways that we've held our peers accountable?
I want to hear about how you've held your peers accountable, because I think it's really important for people who are watching this to hear about the struggle that you've gone through in having to do that and correcting other people. Because again, so often people stop at themselves. And as a white person, I feel like white people can't just stop at themselves. They actually have to do the extra work of doing what you said, like correcting your colleagues and also making sure the entire culture is anti-racist and there aren't just small pockets where students feel like they're being affirmed. So I really want you can talk about common mistakes, but I would love to hear about just kind of some of the methods that you've had to take to hold other people accountable.
And this is where the work is really important, right? 83, I think it's 83% of teachers, I can verify that for you and give you a source for that, are white. And I think that might be actually 83% might be white women. There's a scholar, I can give you that, I can cite for that. So 83% of people in the front of a classroom in these positions of power, and when teachers act like they don't have a lot of power, they do. We have a lot of power in that classroom, right? And so we have such a majority hold on the power in our school districts and our school systems and our classrooms, that it is really important, I think, when you do this work, that you find your co-conspirators. And that comes from Dr. Bettina Love, who I will probably talk about every chance I get here. If you're not reading Dr. Love, you need to read and follow and watch her videos. She is everything. She's abolitionist pedagogy 101 to 1,000,001. And she talks about being co-conspirators. So, we've confronted a few people. I'll be quite honest with you. I've gotten to a point where it's so much easier for me to confront white men in my profession than it is, which there are a lot of white men actually at our school, but in our profession, in our union, in organizations that I'm in, like NCTE and ALAN, which is the Assembly on Literature for Adolescents. And, it's just about when something is not right, you have to take steps. When things are harming children, when people are saying things that are racist, you have to take steps to call it out. You also have to think about if you're the right messenger for it. So a lot of times a white woman is the right messenger. And sometimes, like, for example, we might galvanize another colleague who might have that teacher's ear to do some of that work. Because, like, if somebody don't like you, they're not going to learn from you. So you got to find somebody, you got to find your co-conspirators, right? To bring folks in. Our biggest thing is if a student says there's a problem with the way a teacher is behaving, in a racist way, a sexist way, a homophobic way, a transphobic way. If a student comes to us, and we are two places in our school that students come to, right? if students say that there's something wrong, you have to listen to them. And we have found that coming from that position, your students are saying this. Our students are saying this is how they feel in your classroom. Your students are saying this is how it feels when you say this. That is really, really powerful. All the time, progress is made when we listen to the children. So, you know, find the right messenger for your message. You know, I have found that sometimes it's not me. People get tired of listening to me. I'll say, like, Nancy, you need to do this because they really like you and you were there. You know what I'm saying? So find the right messenger, find your co-conspirators, listen to your students. Nancy, do you want to add to that? I'm talking a lot.
No, I think you're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that I would encourage white educators who are watching this to internalize is that when a white educator calls you in, it might feel like a call out. There is a time for a call out, you know, and holding each other accountable. I am probably one of the least confrontational people by nature. I've had to learn the act of calling in and calling out because my discomfort is so temporary and so meaningless in the grand scheme of this work.
That's right.
So when we call other folks in, what I would encourage is for the person on the other side or who feels like they're on the other side of that conversation to keep an open mind and an open heart and fully examine their pedagogy and their practice with humility, with this idea that perhaps they're not right in that moment. And again, centering the student and their experience. And to be honest with you, Aaryn, when there have been opportunities for me to call someone out and I wasn't brave enough, I've had to go back and initiate a conversation with that person and revisit some things that were said or behaviors that I witnessed that I feel like need to be discussed. And has it always gone over well? Absolutely not. But one thing that I'd like to reiterate is that you don't have to be perfect at this work. It's a growth process. We're learning together, but it's important that you engage somehow and not allow yourself to be a bystander in your school setting, right? And allow your students, your babies to be bullied in other spaces.
Yep.
So, oh my goodness, it's uncomfortable work, but it is necessary work. It is the work.
Yeah. Can I add two quick things that you made me think of, Nancy?
Yes.
I will say that every single time I have found that courage, that space to stand up, it has made me more brave. Than it's emboldened me for the next time, right? And I like to say this to white people, like, listen, what I have learned when someone called me in is this. I'm sharing this with you because I care about you. And I want you to be able to learn and grow the way I've learned and grown because people cared enough to share this with me. And so I find that to be a little bit like, you know, kind of a communication strategy. Like, listen, I used to kind of think that way too. And then someone shared this article with me or said, you know, help me learn this or whatever, right? So finding this, like, okay, we're all learning and growing here, which is what Nancy was saying. Like, we're all learning and growing here together. And it's okay not to know until someone helps you know. Then it's not okay not to know, right? Then you're making a choice.
Yeah, I agree. You know, originally when I asked you both to be a part of this week of programming, and when I asked you both to be on this video, I wanted you to provide some resources to be able to leave on the timeline for other white educators to follow. And I think something I thought amazing happened yesterday when Nancy was actually looking or coming up with her resources. She stumbled upon Dr. Dena Simmons, who has already done that labor. Dr. Dena Simmons is a Black woman, a graduate of Yale. And Nancy actually asked Dr. Dena if she could use her resources to share on this call, and Dr. Dena actually asked if she could be a part of it, which I found to be absolutely amazing. One, just for her saying, I'm actually comfortable and interested in talking about my own work, but also with Nancy, I'm so happy that you wanted to actually get permission before even using her. So I'm so excited to welcome, Dr. Dena Simmons to this call. Welcome, Dr. Simmons. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this conversation today. So if you could please introduce yourself for us in this moment.
Hi, my name is Dena Simmons. I am the daughter of Jacqueline Knowles and the granddaughter of Viola Hector, who came to this country. My mom came to this country from Antigua. So, I am connected to other places as well as where I am right now. I am a practitioner, scholar, and educator in everything that I do. And I will share institutions and all of that, all of the accolades. But that doesn't matter because it doesn't define me. What defines me is the work that I do and my actions and how I treat, my neighbors and how I treat the people when I walk down the street. So I try to lean into that as much as I can. So that's the best, the way I can introduce myself to you right now.
I love that. The accolades don't matter. I'm so interested in the work that people do and who people are. So I appreciate that. I know in your TED Talk, you talked about, I've had Ask King in my head all night. And you reminded me of so many times that teachers have said things to me in class that have stuck with me even to this day. Could you tell me a little bit more about your journey to kind of wanting to mitigate those kind of things
Yes.
in your classroom and to changing the culture in any of the schools that you have worked in?
So I did a TED Talk called How Do Students of Color Confront Imposter Syndrome? And the first thing that I would say is that imposter syndrome, like when you say syndrome, it makes it sound like it's a mental health disorder, but it's not. It's sort of these experiences that we have where we don't feel like anything that we've done, any of our accomplishments are ours. Like that somehow someone gave it to me because they felt sorry for me. But my push on that is that there are experiences that we have, but at the core of imposter syndrome is this concept of belonging. And we all just want to belong. And so as educators, if we focus on how can I affirm my students and their experiences and their identities and their histories in everything that I do, then we are not contributing to the trauma of erasure that happens to too many students of color, to too many Black students, to too many LGBTQI students, to too many students on the margins. Because if we really understand education as having a foundation of whiteness, then we have to do the work to combat that every single day. That's why this work of anti-racism is so crucially important. Because if not, we are part of the harm. Doesn't matter what curricula it is, if I, as the educator, have not done my work, I am part of the harm. And so I just wrote a piece for ASCD's Education Leadership. It's out, it's like pre-out because it's supposed to come out in a magazine like in the fall, but I just felt so moved to write this piece where I talked about like going to school, and I'm sure you can relate to me, sis, is going to school and not reading anything about myself. Seeing teachers, and how that made me feel so erased. That's a trauma, right? And then on top, so I basically, it's called like, if we don't address racism, then we're not trauma informed. Like it's something along the lines, like we are not doing trauma work if we are not addressing trauma. Why? Because me, even with my light skinned Blackness, experienced trauma. And I know it's different for us. And I acknowledge my privilege and my proximity to whiteness. And the fact that that's the truth is a problem.
What have been some of the mistakes that you have witnessed of your colleagues or your contemporaries in attempting to do this work or actually doing this work?
I would just say in general, some of the mistakes that my colleagues take on or other teachers take on is this savior complex. right? Because when you put on that savior complex, you communicate to me that you actually don't believe in my power. So the whole savior, the whole savior mentality actually disempowers. Because now it's like, oh, you little poor little black charity kid. Come on, let me do this for you. And what you do is actually center yourself. And then you contribute to the harm of single narratives, of erasure, and of a very skewed narrative of who you are. Because the folks who are the saviors need me to be in charity. They need me to be in need. They need me to be poor in order for them to feel good about themselves. So that, to me, I think above anything is the challenge that we need to mitigate is like, stop centering ourselves. Like, stop centering ourselves. We are teachers because we want to care. And I'm like, mad love to the teachers because I'm a former teacher and we do want to care. We do want to make a difference, but not at the cost of our students.
So Courtney and Nancy, how have you all combated, the savior complex? How have you all combated that in your own lives?
I think that white saviorism is rooted in deficit thinking as well. I agree with everything that Dr. Simmons said. We were over here snapping away. But I think that an idea that white teachers have that Black students can't, Black students won't, or their families can't and won't, centers us, that we have to save them from themselves or save them from something greater than themselves, when really our only job is to hold space and provide them with an opportunity to refine the tools and the truth that already exists within them. And every answer that they're searching for is inside of themselves. And all we are charged to do is hold space for them to explore and express what they find.
I think there was a young adult author, and I wish I could remember who said, like, people talk about like books saving lives. It was not Jason Reynolds, but I know Jason Reynolds has said very similar things to this, that, books are not about saving lives. Books are about showing young people, what already exists within themselves, right? We're not here to save anyone. And I think it's really important for white women to get that out of their heads. I mean, when Nancy says deficit thinking, this idea that, Black kids won't read, or Black kids won't do this or that, or Black families to be fixed. We need to practice some cultural humility here and realize that, that when we think that way, we are centering white supremacy in our classroom spaces. And so I will agree with Nancy and Dr. Simmons 100% that, students come to school not to be saved. They come to get the tools that they need to make a difference in their lives or become whatever they want to be, right? That is not what we're not Jesus, we're not church. They come for tools. They come for access to materials and pedagogy and practice that prepares them for the world. They don't need white women saving them.
I'm glad that it was you that said that, because I constantly tell white folks to get your cousins, right?
Yes.
Like, get your cousins. Because
that's why we're here.
Right? Get your cousins, ladies, because when I do it, it's not met with the same love.
Right.
When I do it, I'm angry. When I do it, I'm a troublemaker. When I do it, I'm an agitator.
Yep.
And so, like, the fact that even today, even everything I know, I have to speak in measured terms because white discomfort is dangerous for me.
Mm.
And I would say white comfort is dangerous to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm dedicated, and I'm so happy we're able to have this conversation. I'm dedicated to white people being consistently uncomfortable in this work, because so many of us are consistently uncomfortable just living our lives. So for me, it's very important that white people who are claiming to want to live in a just, anti-racist society, that they become best friends with that discomfort,
Yep.
you know, because we have had to know our discomfort by name for so long, and that's not going to change, you know,
Yep.
even in this conversation. But I want to ask, because earlier, Courtney, you were talking about teaching at a white school at a predominantly white institution, and you said how they hadn't read a Black author all the way up to their 9th grade year.
11th
And
grade.
I'm 11th grade year.
11th grade, yeah.
And I'm wondering, how do you, and this is for all three of you, how do you all feel the United States public education system has led us to this moment of uprising today?
I would like to say that this uprising is not only our schools are not the only places that have blood on their hands. It's also people's parents, right? Like we learn racism.
Yes.
We learn bias, right? So that happens from when you're born and the way and who your parents interact with. White people could grow up comfortably in a white neighborhood and not ever have to see me. And if they see me or someone that looks like me, guess what I'm doing? I'm cleaning the house. I'm serving food. Or if maybe that person is in a higher class, maybe some white folks who are not as privileged with money, maybe they're neighbors, right? But for the most part, it is learned, and that's why I do believe that you can learn to be anti-racist. It's just that white folks don't like to be uncomfortable, and how scary it is to think that you might lose this supposed power.
Yeah.
So our schools have blood on their hands because what the schools taught us was founded and seeped in whiteness. And so what that did for many of us, Black and brown and other like kids who are not like within the majority, it taught us to believe in a not enoughness. It taught us to believe and worship whiteness. That all of us Black folks, even to today, are still unlearning and undoing the harm of whiteness that came at us in our education system. So it's the schools, but it's also the families with which we were which we lived, right?
Let me speak for my own experience. At Fort Hays, I have freedom to choose what I teach and what materials I bring into my space to supplement that teaching. And I have a choice whether my materials are windows or mirrors for students to see into lives that look different from their own, or to see their own experience reflected in the page. And I have the power in that classroom setting to use resources as windows and mirrors and even sliding glass doors. I think what makes things challenging is when students never feel like their experience is valid, that they cannot be their authentic self in a classroom, and in predominantly white institutions, if Black history is only taught as slavery or as suffering, and we never see Black joy or Black excellence in the classroom setting, if we never hear authentic voices like Black authors, you know, that Courtney mentioned. So I think that leads to an uprising, voices that have been silenced, voices that have been neglected in the classroom setting, single stories, you know, one narrative to rule them all. So Courtney, I don't know if you want to chime in. That was a great question, Aaryn. And Dr. Simmons, you've got my wheels a turning. So
well, listen, I'm writing a book right now about my experiences. Like, you know, I went to boarding school. Like, I think, you know, Miss Lang, you talked about like, you know, my TED Talk. Like, I talk about everything I gained and lost in these white spaces. It's called White Rules for Black People, because many of us have had to follow rules so that we know that when we leave our house, we will come back home alive.
Nancy mentioned windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And one thing I want to be very clear about is that is from an article published 30 years ago by Professor Emeritus Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop from The Ohio State University. 30 years ago, she wrote this article about Black kids being able to see themselves represented in the pages of children's books. And her work gets co-opted a ton by all these people. But I want to encourage white educators to go read that piece of scholarship. It's very short. It's available online. She's done a ton of stuff with Reading is Fundamental. You can watch her videos. But we're coming to a point, right? And I mean, publishing still has a million miles to go. Don't get me wrong. But we are starting to see, I mean, I'm so freaking thrilled. The New York Times bestseller list is so Black right now. It is like so Black. I'm so happy. These are books that I've been saying like, hey, you should read this, right? That people told me to read and I read. You know, I saw We Want to Do More Than Survive is sold out on Amazon, which boo Amazon, but hey, you know, I want to say a couple of things like buy these books, buy them from Black bookshops, you know, have them shipped to you, but also read them, annotate them, put them in your heart, understand the work that Black scholars like Dr. Simmons, like Dr. Love, like Dr. Sims Bishop have been doing. And I want to come back to this windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors things. If you are a white teacher of predominantly white students, or if you are a white mom of a little white kid, you need to be reading books with them that show Black kids not as anthropomorphic animals. It is so important for Black and brown children to see themselves, you know, being detectives, you know, chasing monsters, and, you know, being, you know, magical, not Harry Potter magical, because we know JK is, you know, she's canceled, but but like, you know, Black kids need to see themselves, but we need to show these books to white children so that they do not have this, like, it's like this confirmation bias that we have from the internet all the time, right? Like, oh, I believe that police are good, so every article I read is about the good cops, right? We have this with our children when we only show them, you know, Boxcar Children and Little House on the Prairie and all these problematic books that centered whiteness for all of these decades. You know, I've been in a predominantly white space and a space that is way more diverse, right? That is, I would say, predominantly Black in Columbus. Would Nancy, would you and Aaryn agree with me that our school is
Fort Hays, it definitely is.
I would.
When I came back to Fort Hays as the librarian, and I was bringing all these amazing young adult books, you know, The Hate You Give, which is about a terrible trauma, right? But it shows a Black family with so much love and joy and togetherness. I mean, the arguments over basketball. I mean, Angie Thomas has written this beautiful picture of a Black family, and kids were like, oh my God. I mean, it literally is life-changing to bring, and We Need Diverse Books is a place you can go to follow, and it's more than diverse. I know, I get that. It's inclusive in so many ways, but there are so many good Black and brown and people of color writing books for students, for young people. You got to share them with the Black kids in your life, but if you go home to white kids at night, you need to be showing them the little kid books, the Sulway, the Vashti Harrison. You know, you got to do the work to find those books. And it's hard sometimes. You know, I have a friend who keeps asking me for books for her first grader who's a very good reader. Not that there's good readers and bad readers, but she's progressed beyond some simple things, and finding books that she wants to read that have little Black girls at the center of them is still really hard. So we need to be pushing publishers to do this. We need to be showing every kid in our lives. I mean, and if your life is super vanilla, it is imperative that you bring the outside world to your children, and you can do that with books easily. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to do. Sorry.
So
Haven't we known each other before?
We're gonna be the best of friends.
Yeah, let's change that. Thanks for bringing us together, boo. Thank you, Nancy.
So we're moving to wrap, but I have one final question that I know the three of you are going to answer beautifully, hopefully. I want to know, what do you say to children and parents who feel, even in this white nation with our, you know, white dominated film, our white dominated television, our white dominated literature, what do you say to white people that feel threatened right now that they are being turned into minorities, or that they are being erased, or that the world is trying to erase whiteness, because I think that is what I'm often seeing in these, which I don't know if these people are also beyond reach either, you know, the more so rural white supremacists, the narrative is they're trying to take everything from us. What do you say to parents who are susceptible to that kind of rhetoric, but might be able to be swayed?
I think what we have is that we have to understand that like equity is actually good for all of us. So I think too often we get stuck in this them versus us and in this mine, not yours, that we can't humanize each other. And in the way I teach and everything I do, I really want to push humanity to be at the core of everything that we do. So can you just see my humanity? Like I was walking down the street yesterday, right? You know, and I live in a Black community, and I would tell you where I live, but I was hate crimed yesterday, right? And so that's why I have glasses on. I didn't even put on makeup. I put on like this just to look like I tried, right? Because I'm really struggling here. And so I go out after being like having that threats and all of that stuff, being called names. And I walked outside on the corner of my block. I saw a family. It was a Black family, a mom, a father, and their son, maybe a year old. And do you want to know what the shirt said? That they all wore. They all three had on the same shirt. It said, "Stop killing us." It said, "Stop killing us." So all we've ever asked for as Black people is our humanity. That's all we've actually ever asked for. That's not too much to give. And at some point, when you are treating Black folks the way you do, in that process, you're losing your humanity. So I would like to just say, let us lean into humanity. What is good for one is good for all. People need to understand the interconnectedness of our being. And I just also, basically that's all I would say is like, just see me. Stop killing us.
I would say that Ms. Johnson, you used to have this sign hanging in your space, and I think that you still do, that all oppression is connected, and that we all are not liberated until we are all liberated. And I think that with Dr. Simmons, what you said about the humanity, that's huge for me. I'd also challenge white family members of mine who hold on to this rhetoric. I ask them to examine, if you feel like you're losing power and your fear is that you'll be treated as less than human, does that not inspire empathy for the cause? Does that not make you want to acknowledge that there are folks who are not being treated human or as less than human? I think one of the hardest things for me is that I had the privilege of an undergraduate degree, and that's where I first learned about white privilege. Nowhere else in my life up until that point had I ever heard those words or knew what white privilege was. And so that's been a difficult conversation, trying to convince poor white folks in my family and in my neighborhood that although their lives might be difficult, their lives are not difficult because they're white. And I would charge them with the truth that we've got nothing to lose, right? That healing for all and freedom for all, we've got nothing to lose, and it's time. And just to see another person as human, that is the most basic compassion that you can offer them, is their human dignity and the respect they deserve as a product of the divine, you know? So those are some of my final thoughts.
Wow, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome, Aaryn.
I do think, Aaryn, that some folks who have just worked themselves into a corner of this confirmation bias, there are some people that it's going to take a lot of work to get through to, right? But I do think, you know, for a lot of us, I think about that video. I think you posted it, right? Kimberly Jones, the young adult author and bookseller.
Yes.
What she wrote, like the social construct for Black folks in this country is broken. It has not been held to the same standards that white folks, I share stories about redlining, which people don't know about, right? And really push them, those are the conversations that we have to have. We have a colleague, a Black teacher, who brought his deed to his house to a professional development to show, yeah, look at my deed. It literally says, do not sell to Black people, because this neighborhood right down the street, a couple miles, he rides his bike to work. And P.S., when he rides his bike to work, guess what he has to do? Build in an extra 30 minutes because he knows he's going to get pulled over. Those are not things that white people have to think about. And that is a breakdown in the social construct of this country. And we just have, I honestly think that a lot of white people, and I'm saying I know I'm one, they don't know, they don't get that because they're not trying to learn about it, right? And so I know probably Dr. Simmons, you read Stamped from the Beginning. I am a huge fan of the new YA version, the remix from Jason Reynolds, because it talks about how racism and race was just created out of thin air, and the suffering that has happened because white men wanted this power and this money has lasted for centuries. And I think that understanding where it even comes from. I remember I went to COSI, is like a science center in our town. And I remember going to an exhibit there on race, and it literally, like it said, race is a social construct, and it showed like pictures and all, it was real sciencey. And I was like, I don't think that white people, we're not teaching this. This goes back to the public school being a failed institution. And I'm a hardcore public school supporter, but it is a failure of education to not teach young people as they come through school that race is a construct and that our government is supposed to provide a social safety net for people, and it has been broken.
Thank you so much. Can I just say two more things? And I swear to God, I
The
said
shortest things
shortest thing.
possible.
Okay, I would say one thing is that, like, I say equity, but really what I really want is liberation, because not all of us have the privilege to be free. And then the second thing is, I just want to make clear for the teachers out there is that you can't stop at reading. Like, you can't read away racism.
That's
so
right.
Like, start with the reading, start with the self-work, but then do the work.
Yeah.
I would say.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all so much. But this conversation feels so very important to me. And I'm so happy that the three of you could come together. And I'm so excited to see what this union brings to us moving forward. This has been a wonderful episode. This has been a wonderful installment of Ms. Lang Presents. And again, I'm so happy to present Nancy DeLeon, Courtney Johnson, and Dr. Dena Simmons. Thank you all again, and see you in the next installment.